Hey y'all, this is Wendy Bob, your lovely host with Empower to Empower You podcast. Listen, before you listen to the show, I wanted to quickly check in with you. Have you purchased the books Empowerment for You, Encouragement for Your Emotional and Spiritual Wellness, and the Empower to Empower You workbook? If you have not, please visit bewendy.com and get your resources today. You can also find those on Amazon. You could just search my name, Be Wendy Bob, and they will come up. If you have received and if you have purchased those resources, those amazing resources for you, would you do me a favor? Would you write a review on Amazon and share how these books have been a blessing to you, how they've added value to your lives? I really want to hear from you. How are the books helping you? What are you learning from the books? Share your takeaways with me. Share it on the review. Listen, I would love for you to do that for me. And also, don't forget to rate and review the podcast. All right, let's get to the show. Well, hello everyone. This is your lovely host, Miss B. Wendy Bob. Welcome to the Empowered to Empower You podcast. I hope that wherever you are listening from in the world, that you are feeling safe and well. There's so much happening around us. So for those of you who are grieving, who are hurting, I want you to know that I see you, I'm here for you, and I just pray life and comfort and peace over you and speak blessings over you wherever you are. Empower to Empower You podcast is about all things Jesus Christ, mental health, anything to help you become the better version of yourself. I want to remind you, and I tend to say this sometimes, and sometimes I forget since I say it, but this podcast cannot replace the need for therapy. If you need a therapist, please make sure that you get one, find one, um, take courage and take and invest in your emotional wellness. If you have any questions about that, I will let you know how you can contact me after the episode. I want to welcome you all to episode number 112, y'all. The topic for today is thriving after domestic violence. You need to get your coffee, your tea, your hot tea or your sweet tea, depending on where you're from in the world. I'm from the Caribbean, so tea means hot, okay? But if you're from the South or wherever you are, you might just want to get some sweet tea. That's fine too. But I want to welcome you to episode 112, and I have this lovely guest here today. Her name is Miss Gwendolyn Turner. Y'all, I am so honored to have Miss Gwendolyn here. I feel like she is a celebrity that just came on a limousine and they dropped her off at this podcast. I am so honored to have her. She is an advocate and a true champion in the push to end domestic violence. I'm just going to share a little bit about her, but I'll let her do the rest for sure. But Ms. Gwendolyn Turner, she is a bold and beautiful survivor, and is on the assignment to lead victims to a place of healing. She really focuses on equipping, educating, empowering, and encouraging many, many people. She has endured over 20 years of physical, emotional, verbal, mental, and sexual abuse. And she stands here to proclaim that her life's misery has become her mission and her ministry. Oh gosh, there's so much to share about Miss Gwendolyn. But listen, I'm just gonna, without any further ado, I'm just going to welcome her to this podcast. Welcome, Miss Gwen.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so honored, humbled, and excited. I really am. I appreciate you reaching out to me. I was more than glad to honor your request for me to come on. More than glad. More
Yes,
than glad.
ma'am. Just a little sneak peek. We met at what was the name of the conference was called?
Don't make me do that.
I forgot, but it was a conference.
It was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a good conference, y'all. It was good.
It was a Bishop Stevens church.
Stevens, yeah, the Golden Gate Cathedral.
Look at you. Look, you better represent your pastor.
Well, not now. He is still my bishop.
Okay.
I was a member there for 34 years.
Wow.
So yeah, but the Lord saw fit for me to transition over to the richest corner in America at the Lutheran. the richest corner in America. My church now is on the corner of Silver and Gold. Yes, there it is an intersection
Wow.
here. And I'm at the New Friendship Baptist Church, which is closely affiliated with Golden Gate.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like, I left home and moved with my aunties,
I got you.
So,
Got you.
yeah.
It's good to have you here, and I'm so glad that we got to meet each other at the conference for whatever name. I can't remember the name,
I
but
know that's so sad
I know.
for both of us.
I know. If they're listening to us, they might be like, really?
You're right. Bishop,
But
please don't call me.
but tell us a little bit about why you are a champion. I know I just shared that you are a survivor, and I know we tend to not like this word, but you are thriving. This is about thriving
Mhm.
after domestic violence. Tell us a little bit about why you are a champion to end domestic violence.
First of all, because I was that person, I was that victim, I was that girl who did not know you. And to give you a little more history, I am that bold and beautiful survivor
Yeah.
of domestic violence. And I say that because at 60 years old, the people can't see me, but y'all, I'm rocking some purple hair now. I
Right.
am that lady with purple hair, and it signifies the cause of domestic violence. My emphasis, to get back to your question, on being a champion is because I was a church girl. I was saved, I was sanctified, I was speaking in tongues, I was paying tithes, I was shouting, I was turning around 3 times. I was doing all of this. And my abuser was a pastor.
Mm.
So I did a paper in school once that talked about domestic violence and the church, and I called it the unholy hush in the holy place.
Mm.
So what really pushed me out there was to find out so many men and women suffer through domestic violence quietly in the faith-based realm.
My gosh. My
So
God.
I was like, I knew that I was not the only one. And when I finally came out with my story, then more and more women in the faith-based community began to come out. But there's domestic violence in the church. And that was the thing that really propelled me. I wanted the people to know that God did not mean for us to live in domestic violence. And if that's what you're experiencing, there are ways to get out. And the fact I stayed in my situation so long simply because he was a pastor and I was that gospel singer, and I wanted what everybody wanted. Most women want the husband and the 2.5 children, a dog, and a white picket fence. And knowing that he was saved and I was saved, I really thought this was a match made in heaven.
Mm.
But it's an example to let people know that domestic violence can happen to anybody.
Yes.
And everyone that's listening to this podcast today knows someone who's experiencing domestic violence if it's not the person who's listening to it. So I really put a focus on talking to women and men in the church regarding domestic violence, letting them know that you can rise above this demon of domestic violence. And I was going through it and nobody in the church knew. Let me put one disclaimer out there. My abuser was not my pastor, but he
Okay.
was a pastor. So don't y'all go and tell Bishop Stevens that girl said with that purple hair that
Please
you
make
was
it
over
plain. Make
there.
it
Don't
plain.
do that. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was a member and a faithful member, and he had no clue that I
Mm.
was experiencing domestic violence.
Let me ask you this. And again, I honor your authenticity, your transparency today. I honor the fact that you're willing to share that story with us for sure and
Mhm.
see you thriving on the other side. Two questions. When you were going through domestic violence, is it
Mhm.
that nobody knew because you masked it so well, or they just didn't pay attention?
No,
Were there visible signs, or were there
no,
invisible signs?
invisible signs.
Invisible
I
signs.
tell people that I was the best actress and makeup artist in the
Mm.
world. Nobody knew. You have to understand, being a victim of domestic violence, there's a degree of shame
Sure.
that comes along with it that cannot be verbalized unless you walk in those shoes.
Sure.
There's a degree of fear that lies within you that no one would understand unless they walked in those shoes.
Mhm.
So people often ask, why did you stay so long? Why this, why that? And there are a number of reasons why people stay so long. I stayed so long because I felt like, one, domestic violence didn't happen to me every day, but it happened throughout the relationship. It didn't even begin until I had been in the relationship 7 years. I
Mhm.
grew up in a family where there was no domestic violence. My parents, before they died, would have been married 61 years. Now, they argued, but I never heard them call each other out of their names. And there certainly were no licks passed. So I had never seen domestic violence.
Mhm.
And I did not recognize the signs of domestic violence. Keep in
Mhm.
mind, I was 17 when I met this person. And then I was about 19, getting ready to turn 20 when we actually began to date.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of variables that go into it. So I mask it because my thing was, who's going to believe the little gospel singer over the big
That's
preacher?
true. Mm. Mm.
Who's going to believe that? And then, I know everyone's heard of the cycle regarding domestic violence, the honeymoon period, the this, that, the 7 stages, that
Mhm.
phases that you go through. And there's always this apology. And like I said, I was not in a relationship that domestic violence, physical, mental, or verbal, that it happened every night. We actually had some good times, but there was a serious problem there. Now,
Mhm.
as the relationship grew in years, the domestic violence grew. So I had to first realize that I was a victim,
Mhm.
because you don't always, you think, oh, he had a bad day, oh, she had a bad day, oh, something triggered this, oh, it's not me. And then you begin to wonder as a victim, is it me? So I
Mhm.
started to do things like look better, cook better, do better, just anything to make this work, but not realizing that I was by that time, living on eggshells, because
Mm.
I never knew where the argument was going to come from or what it was going to be about.
At what point did
So
you
go
at
ahead.
what point did you realize that, again, I have like three layered questions, but at what point did you realize that you were a victim?
I did not realize I was a victim. Like I said, the first clue was 7 years into the dating relationship. And I had gone to a concert. I didn't recognize things like him wanting me to just be with him slowly separating me from my friends of from childhood, him slowly, because we did so much. We worked ministry together. I helped him with his ministry. We traveled a great deal. So it was kind of hard. It was easy for the signs and red flags for me to be blinded and not see them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I didn't recognize a whole lot of things. And then the bad language and the calling me out of my names, it progressed. It
Mm-hmm.
went, so none of this happened in the beginning stages. I always, when I speak, I tell people he planned his work and worked his plan. And
Mm-hmm.
then this was not something that I wanted to discuss with my parents. My parents were getting up in age. My father had never been to jail. And if I told him that a man hit me, he was going to jail.
Mm.
So there were a lot of things, but it was, well, 7 years or so into the relationship until I said, okay, this is domestic violence. I didn't know a whole lot about it,
Mhm.
especially the mental part. And if you know anything about abusers, their main thing is power and control.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I didn't lack for a lot of material things, and I have to admit that that played a part in it, because I didn't want for anything. I wore the best clothes. I mean, just so material things had a lot to do with it. And then I loved him. And I tell people all the time, don't get mad at someone, at your sister, your loved one, your whomever, and you can see that they are experiencing domestic violence, because there's a period in that relationship when the heart and the head are at battle.
Yes. Yes. That's
And
real.
that's a hard battle. I
Right.
knew, okay, this is not coming out right. This it's not supposed to be, but my heart
Mhm.
said, if you'll love him more, if you'll do this and you'll do that. So for a long time, my heart won over. And
Mhm.
then I had to get over the fact of what would people say, who would believe me, and what do I do? Do I take legal actions? Do I just,
Mhm.
so there were a lot of things that play into that whole big puzzle of domestic violence.
That makes a lot of sense. This is a random question, but are you familiar with the statistics of domestic violence in the church or the body of Christ?
Oh, absolutely. When I'll start with the regular statistics, and I am speaking on Memphis and Shelby County,
Okay.
as well as nationally.
Mhm.
You'll read that 1 in 4 women will experience some kind of domestic violence. 1 in 3 out of that 1 in 4 will die as a result of domestic violence. When it comes to domestic violence against men, then you're looking at 1 in 8 reported cases of domestic violence, because it's still hard for men to come forth and say, I'm being abused by my wife or my girlfriend or whomever.
Mm.
When you go to the church, I don't have a real statistic on males,
Mm.
but the last study that was done, it was 1 in every 10 women sitting in the Sunday morning service were
Wow.
experiencing some kind of domestic violence.
And that's
So,
report. So
yes,
that may not be accurate because of the shame.
absolutely. Absolutely. I
And,
was one that went under the radar.
yeah, yeah. And I could just see the twisted belief around,
Mhm.
well, I'm supposed to honor my husband. I took vows,
Absolutely.
everything
Absolutely.
will teach, wow, wow. Okay.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And then you also have to keep in mind, a lot of times, and please, audience, please know, I'm not a pastor basher, preacher basher, or anything. I love my pastor, I love preachers. But sometimes pastors are not educated around domestic violence. So with good intentions,
Sure.
with great intentions, with godly intentions, they may sometimes give the wrong advice by
Mhm.
saying, stay there,
Mhm.
pray more,
Yep.
do this. Sometimes that's just not the answer.
Mm. Absolutely. You're so right. What helped you during your experience? What helped you? Anything that you're willing to share?
My faith, it had to be, I mean, that's exactly what it was.
Mm.
And I had a support system supporting me, and they didn't even know what they were supporting,
Wow.
if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
uh I'm one of the founders of Billy Rivers and the Angelic Voices of Faith singing group.
Mhm.
So I was always singing. We were very family oriented. I
Mhm.
was very deeply involved at Golden Gate,
Mhm.
uh, and my immediate family.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate, unlike so many victims, I
Mm.
had a support system. So when I did have to just, come out and leave, and when I had to, I had people there praying for me and saying it's going to be all right, and it's okay, and pushing me on. And that was very important.
Mm.
And when I came out, the best thing that happened to me was counseling. The best thing.
Wow.
I tell people that I know that my life was strategically planned, because as I was coming out, of the relationship, realizing that this is not where I'm going to be. And I prayed this prayer. Bishop Stevens preached a sermon several years ago, because I've been out for some time now, but the sermon was, get me out of this and get this out of me. And for the last 3 years of the relationship, that was the only thing I could say. Get me out of this and get this out of me. And that was my prayer. I couldn't, all the other prayers that that's all I could say. I was so beat down mentally, spiritually, and everything. And then to have to deal with this for so long by myself, because I was too afraid to tell people. Counseling was the best thing, but he had it so strategically planned that when I came out, I went to work at a counseling center.
What? Wow.
I went to the Healing Word Counseling Center, Doctors William and Diane Young. I went to work for them, and I got counseling while I was there working, because I did tell them what I was going through and what all that had happened. So they counseled me, and they were the ones to tell me in those early days, oh, you're going to tell this story. You're going to travel and tell. And I was saying, I ain't going to tell nobody this. If I just let me get out, get me out here. And this is going to be something I'm going to take to the grave, but look at me now. So,
Now, so let's talk about the now, life on the other side. I know there's so many questions I want to ask, but life on the other side, talk about what thriving is for you. 20 years of experiencing.
To me, I would have to replace thriving and say freedom. I have a freedom that is just not describable. And I know that it's God. When someone has your life in their hands and have you in bondage and have you so wound up, and then once you get free, and you really get free. And I tell people all the time, I wasn't, that Thursday night when I ended the relationship, I was not angry at him, even though we had a knockout, drag out, and we argued, and none of the words we used were in the Bible. None of them. But that's the reality of it. But I was not angry at him, but my problem was being angry with me. I could not believe that I had allowed myself to stay in that relationship for that long. I just, so that was another reason why I needed counseling. There's always, I'm writing this thing called After Today, Then What, that talks about my life in domestic violence and when you come out, because most people think that once you come out of a domestic violence relationship, oh, everything's hunky-dory and it's all good. That's not so. It is a process. It is not an event. So now I'm living in freedom, and that did not happen overnight. Had I not gone to counseling, I would have been an abuser. Not just with whom I dated or whom I may marry or anything like that, but I would have been a card-carrying, non-negotiable abuser. I would have been that road rage freak on the street, blowing at everybody, cussing everybody out. That ugly coworker, that would have been me. Had I not gone to counseling, because during the relationship, so much of me was taken away. I've forgotten who Gwen was. I've forgotten what I liked. I've forgotten what made me laugh. I've forgotten so many things that I was just not me anymore. And then to be separated from him at the time, it was like, there was just this void. So I was still in a bondage in my head. So to thrive for me is to be free. And that was to forgive him. That was to forgive myself. that was to forgive the relationship. It was to forgive everything, and that caused me freedom. That's the reason I can walk with my head up. I had no issues with him. He's deceased now, but had no issues with him because we still ran in some of the same circles, him preaching, and we had a lot of the same mutual friends. I always, greeted him with a smile or hello or whatever, whether he spoke or not. Uh, and so to me, to thrive is to be free, to forgive. And that has propelled me to do ministry on a one-on-one basis. I work in the court system. So it still allows me to do ministry, even when the DA don't know I'm doing ministry. But this work is not just a paycheck for me. It is what I have been called to do. So for me, life on this side, and just to touch one person. I mean, if just one person grab something from something that I've said or something that I've done, or for them just to look at me and say, she did it, I can do it too.
Wow. So truly your experiences of life's misery has become your mission and ministry.
Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
that is powerful. So what does a typical day look like for you?
Girl, please.
That's a loaded question, but
That's a loaded question because there is no typical day for me. um, right now, I am currently employed as a victim witness coordinator for Shelby County, uh, a district attorney's office. So I work for the attorney general. And so my work day consists of me being in court, talking with victims, talking with families, and doing things of that nature, my job duties. But then, you have school, and then, I'm a part of the women's ministry at the New Friendship Baptist Church on Silver and Gold. Come visit us. Uh, so, I work closely with several of the domestic violence shelters.
Mm,
So I have no typical day.
wow, wow, your life's work.
Yes.
Life's work. So let me ask you this, for people that are listening to you that may have experienced domestic violence
Mhm.
or maybe in situations where they're questioning, is this normal? Is this domestic violence? I don't want this to sound like a class, but if you were to just highlight 3 to 5 red flags of this is what this is,
Yeah.
right? This is what domestic violence is, so people can really heighten their radar, if I could say, or
Yeah.
their worry meter. What would those
Mm.
be? What would you say?
I am often asked that question, and it's an awesome question. And one of the main things is that if something does not feel right, it's not right.
Mhm.
The best feeling is your gut feeling.
Mhm.
If you're having questions, then follow that feeling, research that feeling. Another thing, if you have someone who is totally trying to totally keep you occupied
Hmm.
and away from family and away from friends, if they can't engage in the things that you want to engage in,
Mhm.
then there may be something wrong there. Because in a relationship, in a healthy relationship, you should both be able to engage in each other's activities, in each other's um, conversation, even if you're not allowed to be yourself. If you can't be your true self
Mhm.
with the person, if they are upset about you and your true self, then that's a sign. Things like I tell parents a lot of times when I'm talking to parents about their children, watch their habits. Watch their conversations, watch their demeanor. You know,
Mhm.
if you are feeling down more than you used to feel down, if you're questioning yourself more than you used to question yourself because of this relationship that you're in, there may be something going on. And always remember those two words, power and control. If it's their way and that's the only way, what more can you say? I tell parents again, a lot of times, watch the way your children, if they all of a sudden start to dress differently.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You know, what would you say to the person who is in this situation, maybe notices some of the red flags, but the person feels stuck and doesn't know, they feel stuck, they feel trapped, they're dealing with the fear, the shame, the guilt
Mhm.
about how to get out of the situation? What would you say to that person?
I would say to them that, and especially if you're in this area uh, of the country, there are way more resources out there now than there were when I was experiencing domestic violence. Things are confidential, and before I go, I'll give resource numbers to call.
Mhm.
But if you know within yourself that eventually this is going to have to come to an end, start thinking about a safety plan. I
Yeah.
really preach about safety plans now because it has become a very, very dangerous thing for people to leave domestic violent relationships.
Mhm.
So start with a safety plan. And I always tell people your safety plan may not be my safety plan. But one general thing you need to do is start making copies of all your documents, your driver's license, your birth certificate, your social security card, all of these things that you may need to start over. Make copies of all of those documents and give them to someone. You can put them in an envelope and give, just so that you will have things that you can start off, especially if you have children. Because one of the things that abusers are known to do is take the telephone first and then take all of your identification, so it'll be hard for you to start over again.
Mhm.
I think that everybody has one person that they possibly can talk to. And even if you have to have that person say, look, please get some resources for me,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, and help me with this process. Reach out to me on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook a lot, but if you hit me up on Messenger, you know, I am more than willing.
What's your name on Facebook?
Gwendolyn Turner or Gwen Turner. It may
Okay,
have something like that lady with the purple hair.
got it. I definitely will share that in the show notes for sure.
Absolutely.
Before we jump into resources as we wrap up, you know, earlier I heard you say that people would ask you, why did you stay so long? I just think that it's such a deprecating, a victimizing question to
Yeah,
ask.
it re-victimizes.
It does. And so
Mhm.
if you can identify maybe 3 to 5 things, I don't know why 3 to 5 is the number tonight, 3 to 5 things that people should not say or ask a victim of domestic violence.
Oh yeah, I can probably give you 10 of those.
Yeah.
Because and especially as a faith-based community, surprisingly enough,
Yeah,
we ask the wrong questions.
we do.
What did you do?
Oh, I got mad. I just got mad.
What did you do? What didn't you do? Well, just tell me what happened, as though that can be summed up in a sentence or even a conversation. Another thing we will say, did you pray about this? Don't say that. Don't say that.
And why did you stay so long?
Yeah. And why did you stay so long? Another thing we'll say, once people find out, girl, leave and leave now. But we never offer them a couch to sleep on. We just
Mm.
tell them to leave. Where are they going? We have an offer to, who's going to take the children to school? Who's gonna babysit the children? You just telling me to leave, and I got these 3 little babies right here, and I gotta go to work. He beat me, but he did keep the children.
Mm. Mm.
So don't be so quick to say, just leave. You
Okay.
know, so unless you're gonna offer them, look, I know you gotta go, you getting ready to go. Let me buy you a hotel for one night. So because the one thing that a person coming out of domestic violence, the one thing that they need more than anything is sleep.
Mm.
That maybe seems so simple, but when you are in those kind of situations, you sleep, but you don't ever rest. I was so sleep deprived, I just didn't even know.
Wow.
Because when you're sleeping, your mind is still going, you know, what's in the morning gonna be like, and then you wake up some mornings, you know, wondering what the day's gonna be like.
Mm.
So if you can be of some service, get them a room for a night or two somewhere. You may not want to bring them to your house, but just so they can get somewhere and get a good night's sleep, think about what the next step needs to be.
Yeah, that's good. Nice segue. And I'm glad you shared that. What are 3 or a few things that people should say? So in addition to what can they do, like offer a room for them to
Mhm.
rest, what are a few things that people should say to somebody who's a victim?
Nothing.
Well,
Because most times, and I say that because most times if a victim has gathered the strength, the courage, the gumption to say something's going on, or he's beating me, or we're fighting, or whatever they say, if they get to verbalize that, you have no clue how hard that is to admit.
mm,
Sometimes people admit it in a moment of anger, you know, but even after that, but if they come to you and they're talking to you about the situation, listen, and listen without judgment.
mm,
One thing you can say is, if you ever need to talk, you can talk to me, and this is a judgment-free zone.
yes.
Because if they're talking to you and you've never experienced domestic violence, there's nothing you can say.
Mhm.
But they need, sometimes just to talk about it gives a little more freedom and a little more strength.
Absolutely. And even just thanking them for sharing it with you.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
let them know you're in my thoughts. If there's anything, one good question is, what can I do
Yeah.
to help you through this process?
That's good. That's good. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that with us for sure. Okay. Now, how can people find you? What are some resources that you would like to share? And
Mhm.
put that in the show notes for sure.
Okay, they can reach me, like I said, on Facebook. Just hit me up in Messenger, because we don't want to put your business all out, you know, on
Yeah.
the street. And if you reach out, I promise you, I will get back to you, usually in the afternoons, because I'm usually in court in the mornings. Um, as far as resources, there are 2 resources that I would like to share that will point you in the right direction. It will really 3. The Family Safety Center is the first point of contact, and their number is 901 222 4400. The Family Safety Center will help with orders of protection. They'll help with warrants for arrest. They will help with emergency shelter,
Mhm.
um, all of those things. The next place is the Crime Victim Rape Crisis Center. They will also do orders of protection. They have free confidential counseling. They will give counseling to the victim and victim's family members.
That's good.
Their number is 901 222 3950. And the last place is a place near and dear to my heart. All of these places are near and dear to my heart. I've worked at all of these places and I still work with all
Sure.
of these resources. And that's the YWCA of Greater Memphis. And that number is 725-4277. And they will help you with emergency shelter.
You said 725-4277.
Correct.
Great, great, great. And for people who are living out of state, living out of Tennessee, of course, there's a domestic violence hotline.
Absolutely. There is.
And I can get that and put that on the show notes for sure.
Please. Because
Yeah.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
mhm.
Wow. Well, is there any final, you've shared a lot with, there's so many things to ask you. There's so many things, this could go on for a
Oh,
long.
invite me back.
I know, I'm definitely going to invite you back because this is such a relevant conversation. I'm so thankful for you. I'm so thankful for your mission, for your ministry, for how you're serving the community at large. Thank you for your transparency and sharing with us today. And is there any final thing? Maybe I didn't ask you a question, but there's something final you want to share with the audience today.
Um, there are a couple of things. One thing is that domestic violence can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
Do not feel like you are alone. In my years of working in domestic violence, my youngest client has been 14 years old. My oldest client was 90 and 91. Domestic violence knows no race, no socioeconomic status, no sexual orientation. It can happen to anybody. The next thing is everybody knows somebody. Most of all, I want to say that you can rise above that demon of domestic violence. You can come out. Is it easy? I'll be honest with you. It is not always the easiest thing. But that first step will be your best step into coming out. And look at me. I know you can't see me now, but I hope you can hear in my voice the sincerity that I have in letting that you know it is not impossible to rise above domestic violence. You can come out. It's not an event, it's a process, but it's possible.
I love it. Yes, yes, yes. Now, lastly, I keep saying final.
That's okay.
I sound like my bishop. All right, coming to a close. He'll do it 5 times. But I heard you say earlier that you're writing something. Is this something, a book? Is it a secret? I mean, are you done?
No, I'm not done.
Okay.
So, but I am right. And it's so strange because I'm writing 2 books at one time. Who does that?
Who does that?
But anyway.
I love it.
So y'all pray for me.
well, when you finish, please let me know. And
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You. Well, Ms. Gwen, thank you so much for your
so
presence today and your story. And y'all, I hope that I know this was a treat for you. Listen, if you're not going through anything that Ms. Gwen talked about today, I have a habit of saying Miss or Mr.
That's okay.
But if there's anything that you heard Gwen say today, and maybe you're thinking, well, this episode may not be for me, you know somebody who, even if you're suspecting or you know somebody who knows somebody, share this episode. You never know how this can be a help to somebody else. So please share this episode with somebody else. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast. I will put the information in the show notes. If you have any questions, you can connect with Gwendolyn Turner on Facebook. I will put that in the show notes as well. You can also connect with me at empowered 2 serve on Instagram. I'll be back next time with another amazing episode, and y'all stay safe, stay well, have a wonderful week on purpose.
Bye-bye.